Buenos días. Good morning. Bienvenidos a la Congregación Unitariana Universalista de Asheville. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Asheville. Visitante o feligres, visitor or congregant, queremos que sepan, we want you to know que quien quiera que seas, whoever you are, a quien quiera que ames, whoever you love, de donde quiera que vengas, wherever you come from, estés donde estés en el camino de explorar quién eres, wherever you are on the journey of becoming who you are, usted es valioso y digne de amor. You are worthy and deserve love. Bienvenidos esta mañana. Welcome this morning. I'm Reverend Claudia Jimenez, and I serve this congregation as Minister of Faith Development. And today, I am grateful to be able to offer service in the company of our worship associate, Susan Andrew, our pianist, Steve LaPointe, and Simon Jacobs, our AV. And buddy, I'm sorry England lost to Spain. It was a good game. So now, let us prepare for this morning's worship with our centering music.
As we light the chalice this morning, the chalice lit among us is a beacon of hope in a world in crisis, a beacon of possibility made manifest in community, a beacon of warmth through our interconnections, a beacon of light illuminating our shared wisdom, a beacon of connection by our being together. That's the words of Deborah Falk. Now, if you will rise as you are willing and able, in body or in spirit, we will sing our first hymn. It's number 188, Come, Come, Whoever You Are. We're going to sing it in both English and Spanish, and the words are right here for you on the screen.
So ven, otra vez ven. Come, come, yet again come. And we don't always include another part of this poem which says, though you have broken your vows 1,000 times, come, yet again come. Because friends, it's not about perfection. We will miss the mark, but it's about how we come back into relationship when we do. So this morning, I offer you a story, and I usually sit with the children, and actually the book is somewhere in there. I think someone is taking a look at it. I've abridged it a little bit, so I'm going to invite you to look at the screen as I tell the story. And this story is about a boy named Samuel and his little brother. How many of us have siblings? Okay. So his little brother is Benji, and he has autism. How many of you have heard of someone having autism? What it basically means is that Benji has some differences in the way that his brain works. And in today's story, you'll see that Benji finds comfort in his blanket. And just like all children, no two children with autism are the same. So the title of the book is Benji, the Bad Day and Me, written by Sally Pla, and the art is by Ken Min. So what do you think is going to happen in the story? Benji, the Bad Day and Me. What do you think is going to happen in the story? He's going to have a bad day. And we're going to find out just how bad it is. So here goes. Samuel was having a bad day. When he was in school, he got in trouble for kicking the fence during recess. At lunchtime, they ran out of his favorite food, pizza. And then, on the bus, I hope this really does not happen, on the bus, the bus driver dropped him off at the wrong stop. And he had to walk home. And how was he feeling, do you think? He was not happy. He was also very wet. So as soon as he opened the door, when he got in his house, his mom said, "Shh, Benji is having a bad day, and he is playing in his box." And Samuel thinks, I'm having a bad day, and who's paying attention to me? So this box, you wonder, what are they talking about? Well, this is a box that Benji and Mama and Samuel made over the summer with just enough room for Benji and his blanket. And that is Benji's special place. And Samuel wishes he had a special place on days like this. And so as Samuel approaches, Benji wiggles a finger at him, and Samuel says, "Hi, Benji." And Benji's face appears, and he says, wet Sammy. And Mom notices too, and she says, Samuel, there's water all over the floor. Take your shoes off this instant. And Samuel sighs. It's not my fault I had to walk in the rain. His mom returns to her home office, and Benji, feeling frustrated. How many of you have ever felt frustrated? He was so frustrating, he gave his best karate kick right above Benji's box. And you know, he always wanted to take karate classes, but Mama would say it was not the right time because the classes were on Tuesdays, and that's when Benji would visit the super happy lady in the downtown clinic. And so what happened when he visited the super happy lady? She would say, let's bounce the ball, Benji. But Benji never does. Or she would say, Benji, let's play a game. And Benji never would. But on super happy lady days, Sammy and his family would get home tired. Mama would make smoothies to help them feel better. And then she would wrap Benji up in his favorite blue blanket and say, you're my little burrito. But on this day, when Samuel returns home after such a bad day, none of that is happening. And his mom goes back to work, Benji is hiding, and he goes to the kitchen to pour himself some cereal. And guess what happens? As if he weren't having a bad enough day, he just pours too much milk. Now he's grumpy, he's hungry, he's cold, and there's milk everywhere, and nobody notices. Ka-thunk! Benji comes out of the box, holding his blanket and tiptoeing through the blocks. He spreads the blanket on the floor, and he pulls his brother down on the fuzzy blanket and rolls him over and over, working hard to wrap him tight. And then he leans over and says, you're my little burrito. And Sammy opens up the blanket, lets Benji in, and says, you're my little brother. And that is how Mama finds them. Can I come in too? She asks. Whether the day is good or bad, Samuel thinks that Benji and he will be okay. They are brothers and will be side by side, growing up together. Now that is our wisdom story this morning, and I wonder what your favorite part of the story was. And I wonder how you feel better when you've had a bad day. And I wonder in the story, in the same way the family comes together, I wonder how community comes together when members of the community are having a bad day. So much to wonder. That's the fun of a lot of these children's stories that we share on Sunday mornings. Excuse me?
We need a blue blanket.
We do need a blue blanket. Yes, it would be nice to have a blue blanket. All right, so now children, today for religious exploration, we will be singing you out with your leaders, and we want the congregation to know that today you are beautifying our campus and living into our seventh principle by caring for our planet and working in or appreciating our beautiful gardens. And the work today is inspired by a true story of UU kids starting an action club. And their motto was, no one can do everything, but everyone can do something. So let us sing them out, and parents, you will be picking them up at 12:30 from the playground So you will need to go downstairs, look for the back door, and go out to the playground. And if you are a visitor today, please feel welcome to join your child as they go out so you know what they are doing and learn where you will be picking them up. So now let us sing our children to their classes with As You Go.
Good morning. It's good to be together again. It's good to be together. The theme for our service today is disrupting church. It's a topic that invites us to push the boundaries a little and consider what we mean as you use by words including church or practices like worship and faith community. Data from a variety of sources in the United States and in the Western world generally show that churches are experiencing a decline in participation, a trend that was well documented before COVID, but the pandemic really accelerated that trend. From the 1940s through the 1990s, church membership was around 70% in the United States. That figure began to decline really in the new millennium, about the year 2000, and the share of Americans who belong to churches dipped below half in 2020, a historic low that persists today. These figures beg the question, what is the other half of us looking for? Those that are still coming as we come together in congregation. I feel sure it's not what a certain evangelical pastor had in mind back in June, as the Barbie movie was spiking towards 1 billion in ticket sales. He duct taped a Bible to a baseball bat and proceeded to bludgeon Barbie's dream house to pink rubble in front of his congregation while delving into concepts including the unclean spirit and driving out demons. I'm pretty sure we're not doing that, but it seems like a good moment to consider what we are doing, especially when we feel like we're doing things right. So here's some more data. Growing churches that are increasing in size, have a clear sense of purpose, with people taking action to live into their values, manifesting what we put into the 8 principles. Growing churches are also more likely to have small groups, like our covenant groups, doing things together and have more people connected through those small groups. Growing churches are successful at raising funds, of course, to sustain everything, but they invest less in having many paid staff and instead cultivate more volunteer engagement, more engagement within our own community. That's members involved in everything from landscape maintenance to serving people in need to worship development. Above all, growing churches have a welcoming feeling. Not just the warm welcome that we extend to visitors each Sunday in service, but an ongoing feeling that's sustained by the heart connections we experience in beloved community. It's the retreat at the mountain in October. It's Brett Johnson's elaborate trivia contests at family nights. It's the soup Sundays where we break bread together with coming of age, cleaning up the kitchen after a fantastic meal with the worship associates. All this and more is what keeps me engaged, even when I'm in full tilt overload, as described in the human mother's monologue in the Barbie movie. Who's seen the Barbie movie yet? Yeah, oh good. It's a grown-up movie, it's not a kid's movie. It's when I'm in that full weight of contradictory expectations, so perfectly articulated in that moment in this candy-colored feminist fable. The mother's monologue is really worth seeing that movie for. Go see it if you haven't. And in the meantime, this week I'll bring you the bottom line message from the Barbie movie. Remember that you are extraordinary. You are enough this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And a little bit of trivia, the producer is a Unitarian Universalist. So, interesting. All right. Let's just take a deep breath. Feel our feet on the ground, our backs maybe against the pew chair, the back of the pew. And take a moment in the center of our service and in the center of our lives to pause and honor silence. Let us open our hearts to a spoken prayer followed by a time of meditation. This prayer is adapted from A Blessing by Judith Quarles. Let us join our hearts and minds in the quiet of meditation and prayer. How shall we pray? First, let us be open to the silence. Let us hear the sounds in this room, the noises outside, and the comfortable murmur of children among us. Let us begin to hear the soft beating of our hearts, and let us listen intently for any messages from within. Next, let us feel gratitude for our lives and for our beautiful earth. As hard as life gets, as sad or lonely as we sometimes feel, let us always be warmed by the gifts of this life. Next, let us hold in our hearts all those known or unknown who are in need. And this morning, especially our trans kids and community affected by the immoral laws recently passed by North Carolina's legislature. We also hold in our hearts those affected by the many climate crisis incidents that are happening throughout the world, especially those in California who had to prepare for Hurricane Hillary. May we find in ourselves the energy and knowledge to bring care to the world as we are able. And finally, let us be aware of the blessing that is not ours alone to do the work of the world. Love and community work wonders that we by ourselves could never manage. Let us share a moment of silence to form our own prayers out of the concerns of our hearts. Now is the time for our candle lighting ritual, when we take a moment to light a candle for any joys or sorrows that we carry in our hearts this morning. And if you are at home, you may use the YouTube chat to share any joy or sorrow you would like to share with the online community. Let us begin our ritual. And we will light 3 final candles this morning for those not with us today. A candle for the joys that they carry, a candle for the sorrows, and a 3rd candle for those in our community who are having surgeries and medical procedures this coming week. May all be well with them. Thank you. So yes, today's sermon is about disrupting church. And it came from a workshop that a group of us attended at our General Assembly in Pittsburgh this summer. We had 12 members of this congregation who were delegates in our denomination's annual business meeting. So here are a few pictures of some of the folks that joined us. There are our banner carriers. There's a big parade of banners from churches from all over the place, and Joanne and Joe were the ones that held our banner. And then here's a group of about 12 of us who attended, sitting in the hall, and noticed that we also had folks online attending General Assembly for a total of 12. And here is one of the many worship services. This happens to be the Youth Bridging Service, a service in which youth from all over the country and from all over the world are honored in their passage into adulthood. And finally, here is a slide of what one of the workshops looked like. There were lots of workshops. So we not only went to worship and participated in workshops and voted in meetings, but we also had a little fun in Pittsburgh. But regardless, it is awesome to be at General Assembly with hundreds of UUs, knowing that across our diversity and identities and life experiences, we hold this Unitarian Universalist faith and our principles and values in common. It is indeed a powerful reminder that we are part of a larger UU community and supported by our denominational leadership or staff, which we call the Unitarian Universalist Association. Now, the UUA doesn't only coordinate General Assembly, but it also provides congregations with many services. We benefit from the work of the Faith Development Department that provides professional development for our religious educators and curriculum. We recently benefited from their support in the process of hiring an interim minister and calling a settled minister, who preaches for the first time next Sunday, so I hope you all are here. And so they have been supportive to us, our association. And sometimes we forget that. But we are connected in many meaningful ways to our larger UU communities. And one of the most important things that happens at General Assembly is the business of the denomination. Every day, important issues are discussed and voted on during the business meetings. Two highlights for me were the vote to call our 10th president, Reverend Sofia Betancourt, and her 20-year ministry includes serving as a parish minister, being a seminary professor. She's an environmental ethicist, a public theologian, and she brings a lot of experience and passion to her leadership. Another thing that happened at this meeting that some of us had talked about numerous times in sermons and in small groups was exploring and voting for changes in our bylaws. And I must confess, I was really nervous to be in the meetings for this vote, because I know that our congregations are microcosms of the larger community. And honestly, there was so much passion around some of the things we were going to vote about that I was afraid that it was going to get a little contentious. But in actuality, I was pleasantly surprised. The meeting moderators made sure that there was equal time for those who were pro and con. They alternated viewpoints. And by the time the vote was called, both sides had been clearly heard. Now, although I know there were folks who disagreed with the result of the vote to continue to explore some of these proposed changes, I felt that we, those of us who voted online and in person, lived up to our covenant to listen to each other, to speak our truths, and to honor the process. Now, in addition to these business meetings, as I mentioned, we attended workshops, and a workshop that almost all of the delegates attended was Disrupting Church, Creating What's Next, that was led by Reverend Peggy Clark and religious educator Jill Novinsky from Community Church in New York City. And I must say that our lead minister really recommended that we attend this, so we did. And it was fascinating. The presenters began by sharing the context of what is happening in religious communities today, and Susan referred to some of that, the decrease in participation in church. So they challenged us, the presenters, to consider how church can remain relevant in times when participation in institutionalized church is declining, and in our denomination, when we are seeing few ministers choose to come to parish ministry. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't have a lot of seminarians, we do, but they are moving towards community ministry, and not many are interested in parish ministry. And we must, be fair that some of this decline happened as a result of COVID, and welcoming people back has been a challenge. But it has been in this congregation the experience that people are coming back. We're welcoming a lot of visitors every Sunday. Our religious exploration programs are thriving. So we are in a relatively healthy space. But that doesn't mean that we just rest on those laurels that, we're doing fine. And this is one of the things that the presenters brought up that made me think about that. Like, we're doing well, but she challenged us to think, there are a lot of folks out there that are unchurched and that are looking for a faith that is not creedal and that is welcoming. And so she invited us to think about what is the purpose of church? Is it just for us to say, hey, we're doing well? We're healthy, we're good, we're getting our spiritual deepening, we're engaged in some activities at the church. Is that the sole purpose of church? What is the purpose of church? When does church happen? Is it only happening right now when we gather this Sunday? When does church happen? And most importantly, who is welcome, and how do they know that they are welcome? So she invited us to sit with those questions, and then she shared a story about her church. And it was a story about Community Church's first Christmas Eve gathering following the pandemic. Now, at one time, their church owned 6 buildings. But post-COVID, they had 1 building on 35th Street, and they had sold the other 5. And they were sharing worship space with a nearby church pretty much every Sunday, except for Christmas Eve. And on Christmas Eve, Community Church was known in the community for the singing of the Messiah. They had professional musicians. They even have a musician in residence at the church. And this was a big deal. And post-COVID, Reverend Clark said Zoom was not an option. We have to do this in person. So they decided, she and her staff and the musicians and the choir and the directors, they decided that 35th Street was going to be their pulpit. and the steps to the brownstone that they owned. Now remember, this is Christmas Eve, and it's kind of chilly up in New York. And as luck would have it, the 24th was the coldest day of the year in New York City, and newscasters were saying, if you don't need to go out, people, don't go out. But Reverend Clark and her staff persisted. They came out, they were all bundled up, they told the Christmas story, the choir sang, and some of the congregants showed up. Some of the people walking along 35th Street stopped to listen. The people in the condos opened their windows and looked out and listened. They had hot chocolate, they had hand warmers, and church happened. Church happened. And Reverend Clark said, that is a different model of church. It wasn't about the building. It was about showing up, and showing up not only for their community, but showing up for the larger community at a time when so many of us were reeling from the losses and the grief of COVID. So what is the purpose of church? Where did church happen? Who was welcome in this story? A suggested background reading would be How the Grinch Stole Christmas, preferably aloud and on a couch with a friend. So are there other models for doing church? Models for disrupting business as usual? Because as we learned during COVID, church is not the building. This building was closed for over 2 years. But church didn't stop happening. We Zoomed, we met in small groups, we called each other, we sent each other notes, and when possible, we even had mass gatherings at people's houses or outside on our campus. And today we continue to make services accessible via Zoom, because in fact there were people from our community that hadn't attended a service in years because they were not able to physically come out here. And what a joy it was for them once they figured out the Zoom, because that was a challenge for many of us. But what a blessing to be able to attend service as they were able. That answers a little bit of that question. Who is welcome and how do they know? And so I wonder what new models we can create for this moment. Are there models that can better engage those who have left behind institutionalized religion? Are there models that can make our Unitarian Universalist faith more accessible to all? Now, changing models may disrupt business as usual, and they may make us feel uncomfortable. And we have experienced that in the work that we're doing around racial justice, because in that work, decentering the dominant culture, when most of you are part of it, is uncomfortable. But Reverend Peggy Clark reminds us, if you feel uncomfortable, you have reached the threshold of opportunity. This is a time of opportunity. It is a time when we are dealing with so much, with the climate crisis, with national polarization, with political immorality, and laws that hurt our communities. It is a time to share the good news of Unitarian Universalism and collaborate beyond these four walls, beyond our areas of comfort. We are in a time when not only churches, but society needs to shift narratives to survive. And one of my takeaways from Disrupting Church, the workshop, was the work of Ron Alexander, who talked about these narratives. And I came back from General Assembly and ordered his book. It's called Citizen. And in this book, he invites us to consider the dominant stories in our society. People being subjects, people being consumers, and people being citizens. And further, he invites us to consider how being a citizen is what we need in this time if we are to survive as religious communities and as a society. And as I read the book, I must confess, I sometimes wondered if we don't sometimes act like consumers in our relationship to church, thinking about what I want from church, what makes me comfortable at church, versus the mission of the church that we collectively embody through our engagement. Now this slide, this abridged slide, compares and contrasts those stories. The subject that is dependent, that does things out of a sense of duty and is passive, and that lives in a hierarchical structure. And some of that, even when we look at the idea of the subject, the person being subject to religion and to dogma and not questioning, some of that has evolved and changed. That's why we're seeing this phenomena of the nuns. But somehow in that shift from subject, we moved to becoming consumers, subject to the whims of capitalism and demanding services, and it being about our choices. And Ron Alexander says, we think we have choices, but there is somebody that is creating that menu. And sometimes we don't think outside of that menu box. And then, if we could have the slide again, we see what he is talking about and how he defines citizen, where we are interdependent. Does that call to mind a principle? Where we are with each other. We don't do for, and we are not done to, but we are with each other. And we share common purpose, and we participate, and we facilitate, and we network. And in terms of religion, we are focused on the spiritual. And isn't that what we do in a non-creedal faith? Because there are so many spiritual practices depending on the many different paths that we follow. And what I loved about Alexander's work was that he writes that the citizen's story is grounded, not blinded by, but grounded in the possibilities of human goodness, compassion, and creativity that arise under conditions of thriving, which sadly is not the case for many of our siblings on this planet. And sometimes bad choices are made, We don't say that they are fair or correct, but sometimes when we look at people making bad choices, we have to look at the conditions that lead them to those bad choices. And sometimes we are complicit in how those conditions are created and maintained, and maybe not even intentionally, right? And yet, given that reality, Alexander states that every day, millions of small acts of generosity, humanity, and art, yes, art, take place throughout the world. The citizen story taps into people's energy and engagement rather than selling to them. It is an invitation to join together, sharing the gifts we each bring and building collective power. So sometimes we may think this is a difficult time, a time of despair, and yes, there is a lot not working, but there are millions of people throughout the world that are committed. And what would it look like if we were a community of citizens that did some deep thinking about our consumer tendencies and how they sometimes limit our ability to be true citizens? So I wonder what this shift to a citizen story could look like in our denomination and in our congregation. What if we shifted from an emphasis on Sunday morning as the main event to include other models of communal worship and spiritual deepening that take us outside of these walls where our message is needed? What if we shifted from the emphasis on the individual building my own theology to the possibility of creating theology together? What if, and this question was posed by Reverend Clark, what if churches were churches without borders? One denomination of Unitarian Universalist citizens with love at the center. What could that look like? What could congregations in partnership accomplish together? Just think about our situation in North Carolina. In Western North Carolina, we have congregations in Hendersonville, in Brevard, in Black Mountain, and I can list them and list them. What if we harnessed that power, that collective power, so that our voices are heard at our North Carolina General Assembly? Because we have power, friends. But sometimes we get caught up in being consumers. Sometimes, and this is real, right? We have lives, we have stresses, we have responsibilities. But what if 5 or 10 people from each of those congregations made those commitments? We could be a force. We could be a force. And lastly, and I think Susan alluded to this, what would it look like if membership were rooted in service that was that is as important as sharing one's treasure? Service, not volunteerism. Service, because that is how we minister to each other. That is how we embody our values and our principles. and give back to faith community and the larger community. So how do we disrupt church so we can keep the flame of Unitarian Universalism lit? Share the good news of our non-creedal faith, and collectively leave this world better than we found it. Last Sunday, I offered a sermon at the church in Black Mountain, and one of the songs they sang just really resonated with me, and it ended with the words, "You don't have to fix the whole damn thing. Just leave it a little better than you found it." And my friends, I think we are up to that task. So I leave you again with these questions. Where could church happen? When could church happen? How could church happen? Who could be welcome? And how would they know? May we engage these questions with curiosity, knowing that discomfort and change are inevitable, and that experimenting, which is something that brought me to you, is okay. We each have agency to contribute what we each uniquely offer. May we trust ourselves and each other as we explore what it could mean to be Unitarian Universalist citizens with love at the center. Love at the center of all we do. May it be so, friends. And now let us take a breath. And because we could be these UU citizens, let us sing together hymn number 1017, Building a New Way.
Thank you. That was a new one for me, a new song. This is the time we engage the work of the congregation, and especially we want to make note of the folks who are here among us who are visiting today. We'd like to invite you to stand and introduce yourselves. We have mics circulating. We do this because we'd like to be able to welcome you now and again in person out in the fellowship hall while we enjoy a little coffee together. Is there anyone who'd like to let us know that you're here today? Stand and tell us your name and where you're from.
Hi, I'm Alan from Waynesville. I used to attend here 10 or 15 years ago, and I wanted to come back and see how things are going these days, and hopefully attend more often. Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome. And I'm Kathy from Kentucky. I'm visiting Alan, and this is the first time I've ever been to Universal Church, so it's
Welcome.
It's interesting.
Hi, my name is Mary, and I'm visiting my girlfriend Janet. I live in San Diego, California, and I'm just here for a few weeks.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Barbara Brennan. I live in St. Petersburg, Florida. I'm visiting my friend Joanne and visiting all my other friends from Asheville. And I used to go to Unitarian Church in Delaware, so Lewis, Delaware. So it's nice to be back, and I feel sort of a warmth towards the whole organization.
Oh, thank you. Welcome.
Welcome.
Mi nombre es Elisa Rivera. My name is Elisa Rivera, and I am visiting my friend Terry from Tucson, Arizona.
Welcome.
Bienvenido.
Bienvenida.
My name is Anne, and I've just moved to the community after planning it for about 5 years, so excited to be here. From Anchorage, Alaska, and attended the church, Unitarian Church up there. And this is my son, Ben. And so this is our first time, and we're excited to be here.
Welcome.
Welcome.
I'm not a visitor, I'm a member, and I want to remind people that there is a welcome table straight across the hall in Sandberg Hall with coffee, and a reminder to everybody that visitors have the red name tags, and members who forgot, lost, or washed their name tags are wearing the blue stick-on name tags.
That's great.
Very good. Well, thank you. We'll look forward to talking with you after the service. Our announcements run as slides at the beginning of the service, and if you missed them, you can refer to Thursday's weekly e-news, as everything is described there. There is an error in the slides this morning. The landscape crew is not meeting this week. They will be meeting again in September. Also wanted to make the announcement that after service in Sandberg Hall, please stop by the table where Myrtle Staples is having folks sign a card for members who have moved on or who are not able to come to services. Maybe they're sick or recovering at home. Please stop by and sign the card. And then also, of course, there's the table where you can sign up to donate some of your skills, your services in the main fundraiser for this organization, which is our annual auction. And now, Reverend Claudia has a special announcement.
Yeah, I do have a special announcement. Our RE staff is in need of some help this week. We owned the two houses next to the building, and the middle house is offline, and it used to house a school, friends of mine, or it houses friends of mine, so that we're going to be sharing space with them downstairs. And that means that we have to do a lot of organizing and moving stuff to be ready for August 28th when they begin. So if there's anyone that can help out this week, please reach out to me or to one of our religious educators, Cam Collins or Jen Johnson. All of our emails are on the website, and let us know that you are able to help us get ready to share space with friends of mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Claudia. Our community plate this month is supporting the minister's discretionary fund that assists members at UU Asheville who are in need and also supports specific needs for the mission of the congregation. You can contribute by writing community plate in the memo line of your check, and you can also donate online. Today's offering will now be collected and gratefully received. If this is your first time here, please let the collection plate pass you by. This service is our gift to you, and your presence is a gift to us. For the gifts of your time, your presence, your talents, your treasure, we are grateful.
Our closing words this morning are adapted from A Blessing by Susan Carlson. We leave this place blessed by our connections to one another and to the Spirit of life. Walk lightly, roll lightly, that you might see the life that is below your feet. Spread your arms as if you had wings and could dance through the air. Feel the joy of the breath in your lungs and the fire in your heart. Live to be a blessing on this earth and explore what it could mean to be a Unitarian Universalist citizen with love at the center of everything you do. And it is our tradition to close our service with a sung blessing, longtime sung. So let us bless each other and then let us listen to our closing music. Let us rise in body or spirit as we are able.
Shine upon you
Thank you.